243, Chapter 24 of Dracula. Welcome to CraftLit, the podcast for crafters who love books. My name is Heather Ordover, and I'm podcasting from the shores of the Potomac in Virginia, the Old Dominion. Episode 243, Letting You In on the Secret. This episode of CraftLit is brought to you by Knit Circus, the online magazine featuring 3 rings of knitting, sewing, and fun. You can find out more by visiting www.knitcircus.com. Also, Cool for Cats, the new novel by Andrew C. Ordover. You can get it at amazon.com. Or find out more from the link in the show notes. And of course, we're still working to increase the ways that you can listen to CraftLit on the go or wherever you happen to be. Right now, you can listen free to the most recent episodes at Stitcher Radio. That's something that you can download for any kind of mobile, cell phone-ish type touching device thing. And that includes BlackBerry. Or you can purchase the iPhone or iTouch or Droid app at their respective stores. And that application gets you access to all of the shows. It removes the little ad blip at the beginning of each episode, and you have access to the extras the week before we send them out to the general population. So that would be the reason to have the app. I think probably the most valuable part is being able to have all of the episodes right there for you. Since Stitcher only hosts the most recent, 3 or 4, I guess, episodes. Anyway, good news. Just the Books has its own app now as well, but you have to go through something called Podcast Box. And I am still kind of learning about Podcast Box, but it's the way that the host feed group is now running the gig. I don't entirely understand it. I am putting links in the show notes, and I'm actually going to copy and paste the text from them into the show notes as well. So if you have someone who you know would like to be listening to Just the Books, but isn't, or would like to have access to it on the fly, there's now a way to do that. And I'm pretty excited about that. So I'm letting you in on a secret. I wasn't planning to tell you about the next book quite so soon, but I'll tell you. The circus that is taking place in Congress, and I don't get political very often, but I've picked a satire for our next book, knowing that we were in the United States heading into a political season. And for all of you who aren't in the United States, I have this picture in my head that you spend endless hours of fun making fun of us out in the rest of the world for how ridiculous we are when it comes to electing public officials. Currently, there is a hearing going on today, yesterday, I'm not even sure, in Congress. My husband came home and told me this is the controversy over the Catholic Church and being required to provide birth control for women under the health insurance policy. Now, I assume I'm one of the very few people on the planet who can actually, I think, effectively argue both sides of this argument. So I'm not actually making a political statement on that part of it. What I am saying is my husband came home yesterday and said he'd never actually seen anything like this before. The guy who is hosting the hearings in Congress actually deliberately restricted women from testifying about women's birth control. I'm speechless. Here, listen. There, I was speechless. I don't even know how to make a joke about it, except to say that our next book will do a fine job for me. Because the next book, which will be read for you by the inimitable Aaron Ziegler, is Gulliver's Travels. One of the books you think you know, but you don't. Political satire, you will not believe how unbelievably modern this book is, and funny. And just like Connecticut Yankee, when you get to the end, the last 2 chapters, he starts making jokes that you swear were made yesterday. They're so unbelievably modern. So I'm very excited, and I'm preparing. I am preparing to unleash the humor on you after Dracula. So that's something to look forward to. But I'm really glad that before this happened, I picked the book because it's too perfect. It's almost like, how we get with zeitgeists. We're always at the beginning because CraftLit people, you guys are just better. And so the zeitgeist begins with you. And I have a feeling that there's going to be a zeitgeist of odd humor that's coming up in our political landscape over the next few months. Because honestly, if we ran the world, it would be such a better place. You're all just better. Why can't you run the world? Would one of you run for Congress, please? Or president or something? I would feel so much better knowing that you guys were out there doing these things. Anyway, women don't need to talk about their own birth control because that's something that's best left to their menfolk. I'm sorry, I had to stop recording for a minute because I couldn't stop laughing. However, I'm going to stop now because Dracula is no laughing matter. You thought I was going to do the wolf there, didn't ya? Ha, ah, ah. Nope, not this time. Couple little tidbits. One is, do you guys remember the really gorgeous walnut Brittany needles, the ones that were really nicely tooled? I had quite a few sets, and almost all of them have been snapped, but the one that broke my heart was, I think my younger son stepped on my size H, which is the 5mm Brittany walnut crochet hook. This thing fit my hand so perfectly, and it snapped right in the center. So there's no even pretending that it could ever be repaired. But my question to you is this. Is there a secret stash out there somewhere where you can buy like leftovers, or are they all really just gone forever? I liked the walnuts so much better than I like the birch. They're just so beautiful. So I'm asking, if you know, I've included a picture, a very sad picture for you. If you know of anything, anywhere, anyhow, please let me know, because I would ever so much like to replace my poor little, lovely, perfect wooden walnut crochet hook. The other thing is, please don't forget, if you donate to CraftLit or Just the Books during the month of February, you'll be put into the running for a pound of glorious homemade caramels, or, if you so desire, an embroidery kit from the good women at mightydistractable.com. I've put a picture and links in the show notes so that you can take a look at those things. I totally forgot to put links to them in the show notes before. So I have rectified that situation. And just a quick reminder, it is not too late to join the knit-alongs for the Ms. Prin cowl or the Cthulhu Waits socks. We've had some trouble getting individual patterns ready for those, and those should be up by the end of the day today. So if you've been waiting for the individual patterns to go live, now appears to be your chance. And I have more information on individual patterns in another arena shortly. But first, I wanted to talk to you about Knit Circus. Many of you have seen the information from Jala about the changes going on over at Knit Circus, one of our sponsors. And the changes are pretty significant, but Knit Circus is not going anywhere. They have put out 18 jam-packed, gorgeous issues of their magazine. But as we are all well aware, the economy is tight and it squeezed them just a little too hard. However, they are still going. They are just using a different format. Knit Circus's editor, Jala, is publishing a weekly e-newsletter with a new feature every week. There will be techniques, designer interviews, books, yarn reviews, all that stuff, and it'll come right to your inbox. Jala and Amy Detchen are also still running the Knit Circus podcast, which comes out every second and fourth Monday. And of course, they are just flippin' hilarious. To get on the mailing list for the free newsletter, please go visit knitcircus.com. So while Knit Circus is still one of our sponsors and still out there making the world a good place for knitters, it is now in a different format. There's also just one little thing that I wanted to let you know. One of our listeners, who goes by Worcester Weight on Ravelry, wrote me this cute little note on the Ravelry messages, and she titled it, and it couldn't be more true, "A place we lit lovers would love to live." There's a blog post by someone that she came across. It's a girl named Miriam, Meream, and she created a little dollhouse thing. It is so cool. It's like a dollhouse on crack. It is so amped and full of detail. I've got a little link to it, and it's just something to go and look at and kind of smile at. I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, I was, maybe because I got so tall so quickly, but I was always enamored of small spaces, not just building little forts out of, blankets and stuff to hide in, but like in long grass, I'd rip out grass and make little areas out of it. And they were like my little mouse houses. And I'd, play with, I don't know. Before Smurfs, there were these little gray mice that actually look like cat toys now. But before, back in the day, they were actually kid toys too. And I don't know. It's nostalgia is what it is. But it's a very specific kind of nostalgia for a very specific part of childhood for me. So I thought I would pass that on to you because it's kind of cute and adorable and fun. And, on tough days, we can use cute and adorable and fun every once in a while. Because, Dracula is not cute and adorable and fun. The last thing that I wanted to say before we get full on into our chapter for Dracula this week is I've been working on the CraftLit and What Would Madame Defarge Knit shop. In the shop, you will find links. Some of the links some of those links stay within that site, and some of those links send you off-site to different shops and stores. That's the only way that I can do it right now, because we don't just have links from that shop. We don't just have links to CraftLit things, qua CraftLit, or Defarge things, qua Defarge. We have links to Jen Minnis's artwork. We have links to other designers who are part of the Defarge family. We have links to all sorts of things. And so the CraftLit Defarge shop is kind of like a hub shop. And one of the things that's up there right now is a link to Meg Warren, who did the gorgeous Tristan and Isolde socks in the first Defarge book, and who did the Van Tassel mittens as well. She has done a new pair of gauntleted mittens based on the Game of Thrones books, which I know some of you are rabid about. Go take a look. I have put a link in the show notes so you can see a picture. It takes you to the Defarge store. You can check it out and look at the other patterns that are there. Some of them are mine. Some of them are little things. Some of them are big things. I will be coming out next week with a new hat that I have designed. I have the prototype, but I'm going to do a slightly different steek on the next version and take pictures of that before I release it. It is a hat. I wear my hair in a clip on the back of my head, one of those old banana clips. And that is a problem when it's cold out because you can't wear the banana clip and a hat. So I created a hat that has a buttoned, steeked back. That means that you could button it all the way up and wear your hair down, or you could undo the central buttons. You see where this is going? Undo the central buttons and let the hair clip stick out. Right? How come nobody invented this yet? So that pattern is mine, and I'm going to have that for sale in the Ravelry store later this week after I do the last set of pictures. And that is all the news. There's also, the reason why I'm saying all this after the Dracula prompt is because I am retrofitting as you know, retrofitting audio for just the books, but I'm also retrofitting CraftLit audio as downloads and just the books as downloads so that you can go and for 99 cents, you can download a zip file that has all of the interim beginnings and endings clipped so that you don't have to keep listening to the theme song. You don't have to keep listening to the end credits. You can just listen to the book pretty much straight through. So, for $1, you can download a book and get the whole thing with explanatory and all of that, both in the CraftLit and the Just the Books formats. Some of them are going to have multiple zip files because the books are so long, your MP3 player would not be happy if you did it any other way. But all of that is available in the CraftLit shop. And the URL for that, if you don't want to go to the craftlit.com website, the URL for that is crafting-a-life.com/shop, SHOP. And that will get you to all of the goody goodness that's available for you. And then we're adding more every week. It's one of the things that we've been working on for a while. So, Dracula. Today's episode is interesting because you're going to listen to a lot of our characters. Once again, it's been a while since we've had a chapter that relies on the voices of so many of our people. Now, this chapter actually has more humor in it than we've heard for a while. We've been in some very serious situations of late, as we well know. And I think Stoker, perhaps because of Stoker's close association with the theater, I think he more than some other writers may have recognized the need for comic relief before you plunge your people into hell, which is, I think we can say, where we are headed. We know what they have to do. They have to kill Dracula. We know what will happen if they don't. Mina will become a vampire and be cursed forever. And we know that this is not going to be easy. This is a fearsome foe and quite a strong one. And so we know where we're going. Well, first they have to figure out how to get there. They have to find out what the ship is that Dracula's on. They have to figure out exactly where it's going and what's going on with it. And then they have to figure out who's going to go and how are they going to manage to stake the vampire. So this is one of those chapters. It's not really moving the chess pieces. We know exactly where the chess pieces are on the board, and we know what the final play has to be. This is more like the mobilizing for Iwo Jima chapter, where they're getting all the pieces together in order to go kill the wabbit, as it were. I don't know why, but that Bugs Bunny episode has been going through, kill the wabbit, kill. So there it is. They're going to go kill the wabbit. There is one running joke in this chapter that I'm going to share an annotation with you for. You have heard me in the course of this podcast over the last 6 years say the word bloody. Bloody this, bloody that, bloody the other thing. And I'm well aware that in the United States, it doesn't carry the weight that it carries in the UK. However, Van Helsing doesn't quite get the bloody thing and how it's used. He knows it's supposed to be a bad word of sorts, but when he's relating stories, things that other people have said, and they're saying bloody this, bloody that, bloody the other thing, he doesn't want to say it in front of Mina or in mixed company or even probably in front of Godalming. So he finds another way to say it. With blood, of blood, with the blood. And it's great. And it's a kind of adorable, actually. But I thought you guys might be interested to learn the history of the term. So with the help of Mr. Klinger, who is the annotator for the volume that I most frequently go to, and with the help of the Oxford English Dictionary, my favorite big fat book, we have learned this. Although many theories have been expressed for the origin, including oaths such as Christ's blood or by God's blood. The word bloody most likely arose from the hostility towards the bloods or nobility. The OED describes the word bloody as foul language, a vague epithet expressing anger, resentment, or detestation. In 1880, John Ruskin, you've heard of John Ruskin before, very odd man himself, opined that the use of the word bloody in modern Low English is a deeper corruption, not altering the form of the word, but defiling the thought of the word. In the 1887 edition of the OED, editor James Murray noted that it was now constantly in the mouths of the lowest classes, but by respectable people considered a horrid word, on par with obscene or profane language. Michael Quinion, the doyen of the Worldwide Words, a popular internet site and author of numerous books on language, points out that the Victorian police reports often abbreviated the word as B, M-Y. So B with a long line and then Y, a practice that continued into the 20th century, when George Bernard Shaw shocked playgoing London with the line, "Walk? Not bloody likely, I'm going to take a taxi," which was uttered by Eliza Doolittle in Pygmalion, which came out in 1916. And by the way, little side note from your host, Heather, if you've never read Pygmalion, as opposed to only having seen My Fair Lady, a movie which I cast no aspersions, I love the movie, but if you've never read Pygmalion or seen a good version of it, oh my goodness, you must. You must. My AP English class in high school, we read Pygmalion and then we watched My Fair Lady and we were outraged. I'm not kidding. Pygmalion is so good. And I'm not telling you anything more about it, except you must, you really must. Truly you must. Oh, you must. Anyway. Why can't the English teach their children how to speak? The controversy still lingers. In 2006, an advertising campaign created by Tourism Australia featured the word bloody and drew worldwide criticism. Blooming is a euphemism for bloody, although the phrase is ironic in the context of Dracula's presence, because Van Helsing talks about the blood and the bloom. Presumably, Van Helsing overheard foul language that he is cautiously translating in this manner, the blood and the bloom, which, my goodness, totally cracks me up in this chapter. Van Helsing also makes fun of how Dracula is dressed. And I think it's very interesting because, of course, the way human nature is when you're dealing with a shock or when you're dealing with real trauma and drama is often to go to the humor. You know, how do we protect yourself? How do we protect ourselves? We make jokes about things that are perhaps upsetting to other people, you know, trying to diffuse the upset, trying to release the tension. And Van Helsing is actually actively doing that in this chapter because, of course, he's very upset about Mina and everyone, but especially about Mina. Poor guy. Now, there is one term that Seward uses, and it just flies by, and it's simply not in common usage anymore in the world, although I think it's probably a term still in science. And so for those of you who are in the medical field or in the scientific field, there's a Greek word, toma, P-T-O-M-A, which means corpse, and ptomaines, P-T-O-M-A-I-N-E-S. Ptomaines are, from what I can gather, and I'm finding very odd information about it, very limited information about this online. Ptomaines are organic substances that are formed by the putrefaction of animal matter. So it's like if an animal starts to decay, ptomaines are created. Now, ptomaine poisoning is a term that used to be applied to food poisoning. They thought that food poisoning was caused by ingesting ptomaines, which seems to make sense to me because if you eat rotten food, right? I'm not missing something here, am I? Now, the thing that Seward says flies by, and honestly, I don't think it means much because he talks about ptomaines being a mystery, but according to the annotations, ptomaines were isolated in 1876. By this time, they knew what they were. So I'm a little baffled by this line, and I'm going to rely on our scientific listeners to catch this and figure out, does it even matter? I mean, is this just something that Stoker kind of sort of knew about because his brother-in-law was a doctor and it was something he heard, so he just kind of threw it in there to give Seward's speech some kind of medical veracity? I don't know, but it's interesting. And I have seen that phrase ptomaine poisoning in older books before and didn't know what it was. So I thought it was probably worth giving you that information, even if it didn't matter all that much in this particular chapter. Now, again, we are still not entirely certain that we can tell when Mina is or is not under Dracula's control, though we have a pretty good chance that she is free of him at dawn and at dusk. But she has become the ultimate unreliable narrator at this point because we just can't be sure. So that's one thing to keep in mind as you listen to today's chapters. The other thing I thought you guys might be interested in, what with werewolves having become so ubiquitous through the Twilight books and Lupin being such a popular character, one of my favorites in Harry Potter, but also there's another werewolf in Harry Potter that you may not have picked up on as being important. And so there was one last annotation that I wanted to share with you, partly because I didn't know this very first fact. Wolves had largely been exterminated in England by the 1500s. Right? I know, 1500 and the wolves are pretty much gone. And the rest of Europe, they were more or less eliminated by the mid-1700s. However, out in the remote countryside, they still were hanging around. And of course, wolves can do a great deal of damage to flocks of sheep and people's herds, and that's their livelihood. And so the keeping the wolves away from your animals and your children was, of course, very important. Now, there's no question at this point. We know that Dracula can control the wolves in Transylvania, and yes, there probably would have been wolves out. He was out remotely enough. He probably would have had access to wolves in real life if you had gone there during this time period. But the other thing about wolves that's kind of interesting, wolves have long been enmeshed in myth, from the suckling of Romulus and Remus, the founders of Rome, by a she-wolf. And if you ever get a chance to go to Rome and you go to, I think it's the Capitoline Museum, maybe? There's a beautiful, I think it's a bronze, actually. I actually think it's near the Etruscan wing. Boy, my memory is really wobbly. It's only been 20 years. Why would it be wobbly? But there's a really fabulous statue of Romulus and Remus and the she-wolf who kept them alive and let them found Rome. But there's also a wolf who devoured Odin, and that wolf's name was Fenris, or some sources call him Fenrir. Now, if you've read the Harry Potter books, especially the last one, you will recall a werewolf named Fenrir. Because who's not stupid? J.K. Rowling's not stupid. European culture associates wolves with evil, as is most evident in the tale of Little Red Riding Hood. Now, there was a plague of lycanthropy that swept Europe between 1520 and 1630. And I hear you through the headphones. I hear you saying, Heather, what do you mean there was a plague of lycanthropy going through Europe in between 1520 and 1630? What, you mean like people were turning into werewolves? And the answer is kind of. Here's the story. Over 30,000 people in France alone were tried on charges of werewolfism. This may be seen as emblematic of a deep-seated fear of wolves, although the annals of medicine also provide clues to the phenomenon. One later presumed cause of the concentration of cases was ergot poisoning, caused by the consumption of rye, used in breads and cereals, that had been infected with a parasite. I know, right? You didn't know that today was going to be so gross, did you? The parasite's symptoms, the symptoms of getting this disease, which is also known as St. Anthony's fire, include hallucinations, convulsions, extreme thirst, and visions of being attacked by a beast or of turning into one. How cool is that? I had no idea. I know that when certain grains start to ferment, all sorts of weird things can happen. But I didn't know that about a parasite in the rye. It's kind of gross. So rye bread today will not turn you into a werewolf. I just wanted to put that out there so that the Rye Bread Commission, the lobbyists, don't come and attack me for telling you not to eat rye bread. I think you're fine. I really do. But the last thing is I want to tell you that I have a little link to a page on Winchester rifles, the repeater. If you haven't seen a whole lot of Westerns in your life, you may not know that the Winchester, especially the Winchester 73, the model that came out in 1873, a repeating action pump lever rifle, which allowed you to pump the next shot into the chamber, which is obviously why it's called a repeater. The repeating action let you fire more quickly. It was a very popular gun. It is sometimes called the gun that won the West, although that is a little debatable. There was another gun out there that was also very, very good. Quincy Morris, as you might expect, is a fan of the Winchester repeater, and I will put a link on the show notes to his fabulous favorite gun. I will also, if I can find it, I've been looking. I haven't found a good one yet, but I'm going to keep looking after the recording is done. I'm going to see if I can find a video that shows you how the repeating action works so that you can take a look at why this would have been such a valuable tool. So there we are. I am going to play many, many, many voices today for you for our chapter 24 of Dracula.
Dr. Seward's phonograph diary, spoken by Van Helsing. This to Jonathan Harker. You are to stay with your dear Madam Mina. We shall go to make our search, if I can call it so, for it is not search but knowing, and we seek confirmation only. But do you stay and take care of her today. This is your best and most holiest office. This day nothing can find him here. Let me tell you that, so you will know what we four know already, for I have tell them. He, our enemy, have gone away. He have gone back to his castle in Transylvania. I know it so well as if a great hand of fire wrote it on the wall. We have prepared for this in some way, and that last earth box was ready to ship somewheres. For this he took the money. For this he hurry at the last, lest we catch him before the sun go down. It was his last hope, save that he might hide in a tomb that he think poor Miss Lucy, being at the thought like him, keep open to him. But there was not of time. When that fail, he makes straight for his last resource. His last earthwork, I might say, did I wish double entente. He is clever, oh so clever. He know that his game here was finished. And so he decide he go back home. He find ship going by the route he came, and he go in it. We go off now to find what ship and whither bound. When we have discovered that, we come back and tell you all. Then we will comfort you and poor Madam Mina with new hope. For it will be hope when you think it over, that all is not lost. This very creature that we pursue, he take hundreds of years to get as far as London, and yet in one day, when we know of the disposal of him, we drive him out. He is finite, though he is powerful to do much harm and suffers not as we do. But we are strong, each in our purpose, and we are all more strong together. Take heart afresh, dear husband of Madam Mina. This battle is but begun, and in the end we shall win, so sure as that God sits on high to watch over his children. Therefore be of much comfort till we return. Van Helsing.
Jonathan Harker's Journal, 4th of October. When I read to Mina Van Helsing's message in the phonograph, the poor girl brightened up considerably. Already the certainty that the Count is out of the country has given her comfort, and comfort is strength to her. For my own part, now that this horrible danger is not face to face with us, it seems almost impossible to believe in it. Even my own terrible experiences in Castle Dracula seem like a long-forgotten dream. Here in the crisp autumn air, in the bright sunlight. Alas, how can I disbelieve? In the mists of my thought, my eye fell on the red scar on my poor darling's white forehead. Whilst that lasts, there can be no disbelief, and afterwards the very memory of it will keep faith crystal clear. Mina and I fear to be idle, so we have been over all the diaries again and again. Sometimes, although the reality seems greater each time, the pain and the fear seem less. There is something of a guiding purpose manifest throughout which is comforting. Mina says that perhaps we are the instruments of ultimate good. It may be. I shall try to think as she does. We have never spoken to each other yet of the future. It is better to wait till we see the Professor and the others after their investigations. The day is running by more quickly than I ever thought a day could run for me again. It is now 3 o'clock.
Mina Harker's journal.
5th October, 5 p.m. Our meeting for report. Present, Professor Van Helsing, Lord Godalming, Dr. Seward, Mr. Quincy Morris, Jonathan Harker, Mina Harker. Dr. Van Helsing described what steps were taken during the day to discover on what boat and whither bound Count Dracula made his escape. As I knew that he wanted to get back to Transylvania, I felt sure that he must go by the Danube mouth, or by somewhere in the Black Sea, since by that way he come. It was a dreary blank that was before us. Omne ignotum pro magnifico, and so, with heavy hearts we start to find what ships leave for the Black Sea last night. He was in sailing ship, since Madam Mina tell of sails being set. These not so important as to go in your list of the shipping in the Times, and so we go, by suggestion of Lord Godalming, to your Lloyd's, where are note of all ships that sail, however so small. There we find that only one Black Sea-bound ship go out with the tide. She is the Tsarina Catherine, and she sail from Doolittle's wharf for Varna, and thence to other ports, and up the Danube. So, said I, this is the ship whereon is the Count. So off we go to Doolittle's wharf, and there we find a man in an office. From him we inquire of the goings of the Tsarina Catherine. He swear much, and he red face and loud of voice, but he good fellow all the same. And when Quincy give him something from his pocket, which crackle as he roll it up, and put it in so small a bag which he have hid deep in his clothing, he still better fellow, and humble servant to us. He come with us, and ask many men who are rough and hot. These be better fellows too, when they have been no more thirsty. They say much of blood and bloom, and of others which I comprehend not, though I guess what they mean. But nevertheless they tell us all things which we want to know. They make known to us among them how last afternoon at about 5 o'clock comes a man so hurry, a tall man, thin and pale, with high nose and teeth so white, and eyes that seem to be burning, that he be all in black, except that he have a hat of straw which suit not him all the time, that he scatter his money in making quick inquiry as to what ship sails for the Black Sea, and for where. Some took him to the office, and then to the ship, where he will not go aboard, but halt at shore end of gangplank, and ask that the captain come to him. The captain come, when told that he will pay well, and though he swear much at the first, he agree to term. Then the thin man go, and someone tell him where horse and cart can be hired. He go there, and soon he come again, himself driving cart, on which a great box. This he himself lift down, though it takes several to put it on truck for the ship. He give much talk to captain as to how and where this box is to be placed. But the captain like it not, and swear at him in many tongues, and tell him that if he like he can come and see where it shall be. But he say no, that he come not yet, for that he have much to do. Whereupon the captain tell him that he had better be quick, with blood, for that his ship will leave the place, of blood, before the turn of the tide, with blood. Then the thin man smile and say that of course he must go when he think fit, but he will be surprised if he go quite soon. The captain swear again, polyglot, and the thin man make him bow and thank him, and say that he will so far intrude in his kindness as to come aboard before the sailing. Finally the captain, more red than ever, and in more tongues, tell him that he doesn't want no Frenchmen with bloom upon them, and also with blood, in his ship, with blood on her also. And so, after asking where he might purchase ship forms, he departed. No one knew where he went, or bloomin' well cared, as they said, for they had something else to think of, well, with blood again, for it soon became apparent to all that the Tsarina Catherine would not sail as was expected. A thin mist began to creep up from the river, and it grew, and grew, till soon a dense fog enveloped the ship and all around her. The captain swore polyglot, very polyglot, polyglot with bloom and blood, but he could do nothing. The water rose and rose, and he began to fear that he would lose the tide altogether. He was in no friendly mood when just at full tide the thin man came up the gangplank again and asked to see where his box had been stowed. Then the captain replied that he wished that he and his box, old and with much bloom and blood, were in hell. But the thin man did not be offend, and went down with the mate and saw where it was placed, and came up and stood a while on deck in fog. He must have come off by himself, for none noticed him. Indeed, they thought not of him, for soon the fog began to melt away, and all was clear again. My friends of the thirst and the language that was of bloomin' blood laughed, as they told how the captain's swears exceeded even his usual polyglot, and was more than ever full of picturesque, when on questioning other mariners who were on movement up and down the river that hour, he found that few of them had seen any of fog at all, except where it lay round the wharf. However, the ship went out on the ebb tide, and was doubtless by morning far down the river mouth. She was then, when they told us, well out to sea. And so, my dear Madam Mina, it is that we have to rest for a time, for our enemy is on the sea, with the fog at his command, on his way to the Danube mouth. To sail a ship takes time, go she never so quick, and when we start to go on land more quick, and we will meet him there. Our best hope is to come on him when in the box between sunrise and sunset, for then he can make no struggle, and we may deal with him as we should. There are days for us in which we can make ready our plan. We know all about where he go, for we have seen the owner of the ship, who have shown us invoices and all papers that can be. The box we seek is to be landed in Varna, and to be given to an agent, one Ristix, who will there present his credentials. And so our merchant friend will have done his part. When he ask if there be any wrong, for that so, he can telegraph and have inquiry made at Varna. We say no, for what is to be done is not for police or of the customs. It must be done by us alone, and in our own way. When Dr. Van Helsing had done speaking, I asked him if he was certain that the Count had remained on board the ship. He replied, "We have the best proof of that, your own evidence, when in the hypnotic trance this morning." I asked him again if it were really necessary that they should pursue the Count, for I dread Jonathan leaving me, and I know that he would surely go if the others went. He answered in growing passion, at first quietly. As he went on, however, he grew more angry and forceful, till in the end we could not but see wherein was at least some of that personal dominance which made him so long a master amongst men. "Yes, it is necessary, necessary, for your sake in the first, and then for the sake of humanity. This monster has done much harm already, in the narrow scope where he find himself, and in the short time when as yet he was only as a body groping his so small measure in darkness and not knowing. All this have I told these others. You, my dear Madam Mina, will learn it in the phonograph of my friend John, or in that of your husband. I have told them how the measure of leaving his own barren land, barren of peoples, and coming to a new land, where life of man teems till they are like the multitudes of standing corn, was the work of centuries. Were another of the undead, like him, to try to do what he has done, perhaps not all the centuries of the world that have been, or that will be, could aid him. With this one, all the forces of nature that are occult and deep and strong must have worked together in some wondrous way. The very place where he have been alive, undead for all these centuries, is full of strangeness of the geologic and chemical world. There are deep caverns and fissures that reach none know whither. There have been volcanoes, some of whose openings still send out waters of strange properties, and gases that kill or make to vivify. Doubtless there is something magnetic or electric in some of these combinations of occult forces which work for physical life in strange way, and in himself were from the first some great qualities. In a hard and warlike time he was celebrate that he have more iron nerve, more subtle brain, more braver heart than any man. In him some vital principle have in strange way found their utmost, and as his body keeps strong and grow and thrive, so his brain grow too. All this without that diabolic aid which is surely to him, for it have to yield to the powers that come from and are symbolic of good. And now this is what he is to us. He have infect you. Oh, forgive me, my dear, that I must say such, but it is for good of you that I speak. He infect you in such wise that even if he do no more, you have only to live in your own old sweet way, and so in time death, which is of man's common lot and with God's sanction, shall make you like to him. This must not be. We have sworn together that it must not. Thus are we ministers of God's own wish. that the world and men for whom his son died will not be given over to monsters whose very existence would defame him. He have allowed us to redeem one soul already, and we go out as the old knights of the cross to redeem more. Like them we shall travel towards the sunrise, and like them, if we fall in good cause." He paused, and I said, "But will not the Count take his rebuff wisely? Since he has been driven from England, will he not avoid it, as a tiger does the village from which he has been hunted?" "Aha!" he said. "Your simile of the tiger good for me, and I shall adopt him. Your man-eater, as they of India call the tiger who has once tasted blood of the human, care no more for the other prey, but prowl unceasing till he get him. This that we hunt from our village is a tiger too, a man-eater, and he shall never cease to prowl. Nay, in himself he is not one to retire and stay afar. In his life, his living life, he go over the Turkey frontier and attack his enemy on his own ground. He be beaten back, but did he stay? No, he come again, and again, and again. Look at his persistence and endurance. With the child brain that was to him, he have long since conceived the idea of coming to a great city. What does he do? He find out all the place of the world, most of promise for him. Then he deliberately set himself down to prepare for the task. He find in patience just how is his strength, and what are his powers. He study new tongues. He learn new social life, new environment of old ways, the politics, the law, the finance, the science, the habit of a new land and a new people who have come to be since he was. His glimpse that he have had whet his appetite only, and enkeen his desire. Nay, it help him to grow as to his brain. For it all proved to him how right he was at the first in his surmises. He have done this alone, all alone, from a ruined tomb in a forgotten land. What more may he not do when the greater world of thought is open to him? He that can smile at death, as we know him, who can flourish in the midst of diseases that kill off whole peoples? Oh, if such a one was to come from God and not the devil, what a force for good might not he be in this old world of ours? But we are pledged to set the world free. Our toil must be in silence, and our efforts all in secret. For in this enlightened age, when men believe not even what they see, the doubting of wise men would be his greatest strength. It would be at once his sheath and his armour, and his weapons to destroy us, his enemies, who are willing to peril even our own souls for the safety of one we love, for the good of mankind, and for the honour and glory of God. After a general discussion, it was determined that for tonight nothing be definitely settled, that we should all sleep on the facts, and try to think out the proper conclusions. Tomorrow at breakfast we are to meet again, and after making our conclusions known to one another, we shall decide on some definite course of action. I feel a wonderful peace and rest tonight. It is as if some haunting presence were removed from me. Perhaps. My surmise was not finished, could not be, for I caught sight in the mirror of the red mark upon my forehead, and I knew that I was still unclean.
Dr. Seward's Diary, 5 October.
We all arose early, and I think that sleep did much for each and all of us. When we met at early breakfast, there was more general cheerfulness than any of us had ever expected to experience again. It is really wonderful how much resilience there is in human nature. Let any obstructing cause, no matter what, be removed in any way, even by death, and we fly back to first principles of hope and enjoyment. More than once, as we sat around the table, my eyes opened in wonder whether the whole of the past days had not been a dream. It was only when I caught sight of the red blotch on Mrs. Harker's forehead that I was brought back to reality. Even now, when I am gravely revolving the matter, it is almost impossible to realize that the cause of all our trouble is still existent. Even Mrs. Harker seems to lose sight of her trouble for whole spells. It is only now and again, when something recalls it to her mind, that she thinks of her terrible scar. We are to meet here in my study in half an hour and decide on our course of action. I see only one immediate difficulty. I know it by instinct rather than reason. We shall all have to speak frankly, and yet I fear that in some mysterious way poor Mrs. Harker's tongue is tied. I know that she forms conclusions of her own, and from all that has been, I can guess how brilliant and how true they must be. But she will not, or cannot, give them utterance. I have mentioned this to Van Helsing, and he and I are to talk it over when we are alone. I suppose it is some of that horrid poison which has got into her veins beginning to work. The Count had his own purposes when he gave her what Van Helsing called the vampire's baptism of blood. Well, there may be a poison that distills itself out of good things. In an age when the existence of ptomaines is a mystery, we should not wonder at anything. One thing I know, that if my instinct be true regarding poor Mrs. Harker's silences, then there is a terrible difficulty, an unknown danger in the work before us. The same power that compels her silence may compel her speech. I dare not think further, for so I should in my thoughts dishonor a noble woman. Later, when the professor came in, we talked over the state of things. I could see that he had something on his mind which he wanted to say, but felt some hesitancy about broaching the subject. After beating about the bush a little, he said, "Friend John, there is something that you and I must talk of alone, just at the first at any rate. Later we may have to take the others into our confidence." Then he stopped, so I waited. He went on, "Madam Mina, our poor, dear Madam Mina, is changing." A cold shiver ran through me to find my worst fears thus endorsed. Van Helsing continued, "With the sad experience of Miss Lucy, we must this time be warned before things go too far. Our task is now in reality more difficult than ever, and this new trouble makes every hour of the direst importance. I can see the characteristics of the vampire coming in her face. It is now but very, very slight, but it is to be seen if we have eyes to notice without prejudice. Her teeth are sharper, and at times her eyes are more hard. But these are not all. There is to her the silence now often, as so it was with Miss Lucy. She did not speak, even when she wrote that which she wished to be known later. Now my fear is this. If it be that she can, by our hypnotic trance, tell what the Count see and hear, is it not more true that he who have hypnotized her first, and who have drink of her very blood and make her drink of his, should, if he will, compel her mind to disclose to him that which she know?" I nodded acquiescence. He went on, "Then what we must do is to prevent this. We must keep her ignorant of our intent, and so she cannot tell what she know not. This is a painful task, oh, so painful that it heartbreak me to think of it, but it must be. When today we meet, I must tell her that for reason which we will not to speak, she must not more be of our counsel, but be simply guarded by us." He wiped his forehead, which had broken out in profuse perspiration at the thought of the pain which he might have to inflict upon the poor soul already so tortured. I knew that it would be of some comfort to him if I told him that I also had come to the same conclusion, for at any rate it would take away the pain of doubt. I told him, and the effect was as I expected. It is now close to the time of our general gathering. Van Helsing has gone away to prepare for the meeting and his painful part of it. I really believe his purpose is to be able to pray alone. Later. At the very outset of our meeting, a great personal relief was experienced by both Van Helsing and myself. Mrs. Harker had sent a message by her husband to say that she would not join us at present, as she thought it better that we should be free to discuss our movements without her presence to embarrass us. The professor and I looked at each other for an instant, and somehow we both seemed relieved. For my own part, I thought that if Mrs. Harker realized the danger herself, it was much pain as well as much danger averted. Under the circumstances, we agreed, by a questioning look and answer, with finger on lip, to preserve silence in our suspicions until we should have been able to confer alone again. We went at once into our plan of campaign. Van Helsing roughly put the facts before us first. The Tsarina Catherine left the Thames yesterday morning. It will take her, at the quickest speed she has ever made, at least 3 weeks to reach Varna. But we can travel overland to the same place in 3 days. Now, if we allow for 2 days less for the ship's voyage owing to such weather influences as we know that the Count can bring to bear, and if we allow a whole day and night for any delays which may occur to us, then we have a margin of nearly 2 weeks. Thus, in order to be quite safe, we must leave here on 17th at latest. Then we shall at any rate be in Varna a day before the ship arrives, and able to make such preparations as may be necessary. Of course, we shall all go armed against evil things, spiritual as well as physical. Here Quincy Morris added, I understand that the Count comes from a wolf country, and it may be that he shall get there before us. I propose that we add Winchesters to our armament. I have a kind of belief in a Winchester when there is any trouble of that sort around. Do you remember, Art, when we had the pack after us at Tobolsk? What wouldn't we have given then for a repeater apiece? Good, said Van Helsing. Winchesters it shall be. Quincy's head is level at times, but most so when there is to hunt. Metaphor be more dishonor to science than wolves be of danger to man. In the meantime, we can do nothing here, and as I think that Varna is not familiar to any of us, why not go there more soon? It is as long to wait here as there. Tonight and tomorrow we can get ready, and then, if all be well, we 4 can set out on our journey. We 4? Said Harker interrogatively, looking from one to another of us. Of course, answered the professor quickly. You must remain to take care of your so sweet wife. Harker was silent for a while, and then said in a hollow voice, Let us talk of that part of it in the morning. I want to consult with Mina. I thought that now was the time for Van Helsing to warn him not to disclose our plan to her, but he took no notice. I looked at him significantly and coughed. For answer, he put his finger to his lips and turned away.
Jonathan Harker's Journal, 5th of October, afternoon. For some time after our meeting this morning, I could not think. The new phases of things leave my mind in a state of wonder which allows no room for active thought. Mina's determination not to take any part in the discussion set me thinking, and as I could not argue the matter with her, I could only guess. I am as far as ever from a solution now. The way the others received it too puzzled me. The last time we talked of the subject we agreed that there was to be no more concealment of anything amongst us. Mina is sleeping now, calmly and sweetly like a child. Her lips are curved and her face beams with happiness. Thank God there are such moments still for her. Later. How strange it all is. I sat watching Mina's happy sleep, and came as near to being happy myself as I suppose I shall ever be. As the evening drew on and the earth took its shadows from the sun sinking lower, the silence of the room grew more and more solemn to me. All at once Mina opened her eyes, and looking at me tenderly said, Jonathan, I want you to promise me something on your word of honour. A promise made to me but made wholly in God's hearing, and not to be broken though I should go down on my knees and implore you with bitter tears, quick, that you must make it to me at once. Mina, I said, a promise like that I cannot make at once. I may have no right to make it. But, dear one, she said, with such spiritual intensity that her eyes were like pole stars, it is I who wish it, and it is not for myself. You can ask Dr. Van Helsing if I am not right. If he disagrees, you may do as you will. Nay, more, if you all agree, later, you are absolved from the promise. I promise, I said, and for a moment she looked supremely happy, though to me all happiness for her was denied by the red scar on her forehead. She said, Promise me that you will not tell me anything of the plans formed for the campaign against the Count, not by word or inference or implication, not at any time whilst this remains to me, and she solemnly pointed to the scar. I saw that she was in earnest, and said solemnly, I promise. And as I said it, I felt that from that instant a door had been shut between us. Later, midnight. Mina has been bright and cheerful all the evening, so much so that all the rest seemed to take courage, as if infected somewhat with her gaiety. As a result, even I myself felt as if the pall of gloom which weighs us down was somewhat lifted. We all retired early. Mina is now sleeping like a little child. It is a wonderful thing that her faculty of sleep remains to her in the midst of her terrible trouble. Thank God for it, for then at least she can forget her care. Perhaps her example may affect me as her gaiety did tonight. I shall try it. Oh, for a dreamless sleep. 6th of October, morning. Another surprise. Mina awoke me early, about the same time as yesterday, and asked me to bring Dr. Van Helsing. I thought that it was another occasion for hypnotism, and without question went for the professor. He had evidently expected some such call, for I found him dressed in his room. His door was ajar, so that he could hear the opening of the door of our room. He came at once. As he passed into the room, he asked Mina if the others might come too. "No," she said quite simply. "It will not be necessary. You can tell them just as well. I must go with you on your journey." Dr. Van Helsing was as startled as I was. After a moment's pause he asked, "But why?" "You must take me with you. I am safer with you, and you shall be safer too." "But why, dear Madam Mina? You know that your safety is our solemnest duty. We go into danger, to which you are, or may be, more liable than any of us from circumstances, things that have been." He paused, embarrassed. As she replied, she raised her finger and pointed to her forehead. "I know. That is why I must go. I can tell you now, whilst the sun is coming up, I may not be able again. I know that when the Count wills me, I must go. I know that if he tells me to come in secret, I must come by wile, by any device to hoodwink. Even Jonathan." God saw the look that she turned on me as she spoke, and if there be indeed a recording angel, that look is noted to her everlasting honour. I could only clasp her hand. I could not speak, my emotion was too great for even the relief of tears. She went on. "You men are brave and strong. You are strong in your numbers, for you can defy that which would break down the human endurance of one who had to guard alone. Besides, I may be of service, since you can hypnotize me and so learn that which even I myself do not know." Dr. Van Helsing said very gravely, "Madam Mina, you are, as always, most wise. You shall with us come, and together we shall do that which we go forth to achieve." When he had spoken, Mina's long spell of silence made me look at her. She had fallen back on her pillow asleep. She did not even wake when I had pulled up the blind and let in the sunlight which flooded the room. Van Helsing motioned me to come with him quietly. We went to his room, and within a minute Lord Godalming, Dr. Seward, and Mr. Morris were with us also. He told them of what Mina had said and went on. "In the morning we shall leave for Varna. We now have to deal with a new factor, Madam Mina. Oh, but her soul is true. It is to her an agony to tell us as much as she has done, but it is most right, and we are warned in time. There must be no chance lost, and in Varna we must be ready to act the instant when that ship arrives." "And what shall we do exactly?" asked Mr. Morris laconically. The professor paused before replying. "We shall at the first board that ship. Then, when we have identified the box, we shall place a branch of the wild rose upon it. This we shall fasten, for when it is there none can emerge, so at least says the superstition. And to superstition we must trust at the first. It was man's faith in the early, and it have its root in faith still. Then, when we get the opportunity that we seek, when none are near to see, we shall open the box hand, and all will be well." "I shall not wait for any opportunity," said Morris. "When I see the box I shall open it and destroy the monster, though there were 1,000 men looking on, and if I am to be wiped out for it the next moment." I grasped his hand instinctively and found it as firm as a piece of steel. I think he understood my look. I hope he did. "Good boy," said Dr. Van Helsing. "Brave boy. Quincy is all man. God bless him for it. My child, believe me, none of us shall lag behind or pause from any fear. I do but say what we may do, what we must do, but indeed we cannot say what we shall do. There are so many things which may happen, and their ways and their ends are so various that until the moment we may not say. We shall all be armed, in our ways, and when the time for the end has come, our efforts shall not lack. Now let us today put all our affairs in order. Let all things which touch on others dear to us, and on who us depend, be complete, for none of us can tell what, or when, or how the end may be. As for me, my own affairs are regulate, and as I have nothing else to do, I shall go make arrangement for the travel. I shall have all tickets and so forth for our journey." There was nothing further to be said, and we parted. I shall now settle up my affairs of earth, and be ready for whatever may come. Later. It is all done. My will is made and all complete. Mina, if she survive, is my sole heir. If it should not be so, then the others who have been so good to us will have remainder. It is now drawing towards the sunset. Mina's uneasiness calls my attention to it. I am sure that there is something on her mind which the time of exact sunset will reveal. These occasions are becoming harrowing times for us all, for each sunrise and sunset opens up some new danger, some new pain, which, however may in God's will be means to a good end. I write all these things in the diary since my darling must not hear them now, but if it may be that she can see them again, they shall be ready. She is calling to me. End of chapter 24.
And so that's it. Poor guys. They are about to head out onto a perilous peril journey full of peril and perilishness. And we will be with them next week. As before, in the CraftLit way of things, I will be taking a short break after Dracula is done in order to prepare for Gulliver's Travels. I am so excited about it. I've been listening to it this week, and it is so fantastic. It is going to float your boat and rock your world all at the same time, which would mean a kind of a rocking boat, which doesn't sound very safe, but we'll make it work. Don't forget, if you donate during this month, you get put into the drawing for some fabulous caramels or an embroidery kit. Please, if you donate, do indicate in the notes section at PayPal which of those items you might prefer. And I was able to find a marvelous video demonstration of a Winchester 73 repeating action rifle. If you've never seen one work before, it's worth going and taking a look at craftlit.com. Have a great one. Bye. Please remember to support the people who support CraftLit. Visit Knit Circus online magazine, offering 3 rings of knitting, sewing, and fun. You can check out the latest issue at www.knitcircus.com. And what would Madame Defarge knit? A new book of knit and crochet patterns coming to you from the CraftLit family. And please visit the blogs and sites of CraftLit supporters. Those links can be found in the sidebar of the show notes. The show notes can be found at craftlit.com. CraftLit can also be accessed by its own Android and iPhone application. You can purchase it at the iPhone or iTouch application store, or you can subscribe free at iTunes. CraftLit is made possible by the generous support of its listeners, and for that, I am truly grateful. And remember, if your hands are too busy to pick up a book, at least you can turn one.